Right. It's not just about the amount, though. It's what it says about the systems we rely on every day.
Yeah,
The systems that move trillions of dollars around the world with just a few clicks.
exactly. So how does $81 trillion just appear out of thin air? Well, our source dug into some possible explanations. And the first one is almost too simple. A clerical error.
A clerical error
Sure.
for $81 trillion.
I know, it sounds crazy, right?
It does.
But think about it. These massive financial institutions are dealing with insane amounts of money every second.
Huh.
One misplaced decimal, one tiny typo, and boom, you've got an $81 trillion glitch.
So you're saying it could be human error
Yeah.
even in this age of automation.
Exactly. A tired employee, one extra zero. And suddenly you're talking about sums that are bigger than most countries' economies.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's not the only possibility. Our source also pointed to a glitch in the system itself.
A glitch like in their computer systems.
Right, because we're not talking about simple calculators here. These are super complex algorithms.
Proprietary
stuff.
I mean, the black boxes that even the people using them don't fully understand.
Exactly. A tiny bug, an unforeseen interaction, and you could have a financial tsunami brewing.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. We trust these systems with our money, our savings, our investments. What happens when the code itself freaks out?
Well, banks are supposed to have safeguards in place to catch these errors, multiple layers of them.
Right.
But this situation makes you wonder, are those safeguards strong enough, especially when you have algorithms processing trillions of dollars at lightning speed?
It makes you question those "your money is safe with us" slogans, doesn't it?
It kind of does.
To be fair, Citigroup did reverse the transaction quickly.
That's good, at least.
Yeah. But it's not their first major money mishap. Remember that $900 million wiring error back in 2020?
Oh, yeah. The Revlon one?
Yep, they accidentally paid off a loan for Revlon.
And they had trouble getting some of that money back, didn't they?
Exactly. Because of some legal loopholes, some recipients were actually entitled to keep the funds.
Wow. So even when these errors are caught, it can be a legal and financial nightmare to fix them.
Absolutely. So let's get back to this $81 trillion oopsie. What if an error like this goes undetected for a while?
It's a scary thought.
Seriously, what could happen?
Well, it could potentially mess up the entire financial system.
How so?
Think about it. $81 trillion suddenly appearing out of nowhere would create all sorts of false signals about market liquidity, about economic data, and those signals could influence investment decisions, interest rates, all sorts of things.
So even though the money itself is fake, the impact could be very real.
Exactly. Like a virus corrupting the data and messing up how the whole system works.
And this isn't just about one country. We're talking about a global system.
Right. So the impact could be felt worldwide.
This is getting intense. Now I'm starting to worry. Look, we live in a digital world. Automation is everywhere, and finance is no exception.
That's true.
Are we doomed to live in a constant state of anxiety, wondering when the next algorithm is going to go haywire?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think this incident forces us to think about the role of automation in finance.
Yeah.
We've built this incredibly powerful engine, but do we have the controls, the brakes, the safety features we need to keep it from crashing?
That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
So are banks relying too much on automation?
That's the big question, isn't it? Are they prioritizing profits over prudence?
I guess we'll have to explore that further.
Definitely. Because this $81 trillion blunder is more than just a weird news story. It's a glimpse into the potential weaknesses of our modern financial system.
It raises some serious questions about how we balance innovation with security as we move further into this digital world.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to think carefully about.
Absolutely. We'll be right back to delve deeper into those questions and figure out what we can do to create a stronger and safer financial system. Stick with us. This is just the beginning of our exploration.
So before the break, we were discussing that $81 trillion error at Citigroup and how it kind of shows us how vulnerable our financial systems might be.
Yeah.
What's interesting is Citigroup isn't some small-time operation.
Right. They're one of the biggest financial institutions in the world.
Exactly. So if it can happen there, it makes you wonder what's happening at smaller banks with maybe less resources and less oversight.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It does raise some concerns. While I'm sure most banks have safeguards, this incident shows us that they need to be constantly checking and improving those systems. And being transparent about it, too.
Transparency, so regulators and the public can see what's going on and hold these institutions accountable.
Right, exactly. You mentioned earlier that errors like this could disrupt financial markets. Can you explain that a bit more? What kind of disruptions?
Well, our source mentioned that, but yeah, I'm curious too. What are we talking about here?
Okay, so let's say that $81 trillion actually stayed in the system for a while.
Okay.
It would basically create a fake picture of the economy, a false signal that there's way more money available than there actually is.
I see.
And that could affect everything from investment decisions to interest rates.
So the money might be imaginary, but the consequences could be very real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a computer virus messing up the data and causing the whole system to malfunction.
And this isn't just a local problem either. We're talking about a global financial system.
Right. The impact could be felt all over the world.
It makes you wonder if we're all just one bad algorithm away from a complete financial meltdown. Is there anything we can do to prevent this kind of thing from happening?
Well, we talked about human oversight earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that's crucial. We can't just let algorithms run everything without any human involvement.
So we need people to design these algorithms, monitor them, and be ready to step in if something goes wrong.
Exactly. And it's not just about checking the algorithms work. It's about really understanding how these systems function, knowing their limitations, and having clear plans for what to do if they mess up.
That makes sense. But let's be real. Change can be slow,
Right.
especially in a big industry like finance.
Yeah.
How do we actually get these institutions to make these changes? I mean, I'm just one person listening to this. What can I do?
You have more power than you think. You can demand more transparency from your bank. You can support policies that encourage ethical and responsible use of technology in finance. Your voice matters.
So we're not just helpless bystanders. We can actually shape how this technology is used and hold these institutions accountable.
Exactly. And you can also choose to support businesses that share your values, those that prioritize transparency, security, and ethical practices. Your choices as a consumer make a difference.
It's kind of empowering to think about it that way. So this Citigroup story, as crazy as it is, has really started a conversation about the future of finance and technology.
It definitely has.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we can't just sit back and assume everything will be fine. We need to be informed and engaged and demand better for the people who handle our money and the systems they use.
Well said. I think that's an important takeaway from our deep dive today.
I agree. It's always interesting to discuss these complex issues with such a thoughtful audience.
And to our listeners out there, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe double check your bank balance every now and then, just in case. Until next time, keep exploring with the deep dive.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into this whole world of high finance and, well, algorithmic hiccup.
Algorithmic hiccups.
You said it. Yeah. So we've been talking about this $81 trillion error at Citigroup. And honestly, it's made us a little bit, skeptical of technology, a little techno-skeptical.
Yeah. But before we go full on doomsday prepper, let's talk about solutions.
Okay, so less doom scrolling, more solution finding.
Exactly. So what can we actually do to prevent these massive errors from happening, or at least, minimize the damage if they do?
Well, one thing we talked about earlier is transparency.
Right.
Financial institutions need to be more open about how these algorithms work, what kind of logic they're using, what safeguards are in place.
So less secrecy, more sunlight on these black box algorithms.
Exactly. More sunlight allows for more scrutiny from regulators, from industry watchdogs, from the public.
Right. So more eyes on the code can help catch problems before they become disasters.
Exactly. And of course, security is super important too.
Yeah. We got to make sure these systems are hacker-proof.
Right. Absolutely. Cybersecurity is crucial. These days, banks need to have top-notch threat detection systems constantly update their security protocols and make sure their employees know how to spot and respond to breaches.
Makes sense.
Oh,
These
yeah.
systems are handling trillions of dollars after all.
The stakes are incredibly high.
So we've got transparency, we've got security. What else can we do to make sure these algorithms are behaving themselves and not, accidentally creating trillions of dollars?
Well, this is where the human element comes back in.
Right. We talked about that.
We can't just let algorithms run wild. We need skilled professionals involved at every stage, designing them, testing them, monitoring their performance, stepping in when needed.
So it's about having competent humans in the loop, ready to take over if the algorithm goes haywire.
Exactly. And it's not just about checking the algorithm's work. It's about understanding how it works, knowing its strengths and weaknesses, and having clear procedures for what to do if something goes wrong.
Okay, that all makes sense. But let's be real. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially in a big industry like finance.
Sure.
How do we actually get these institutions to make these changes? I mean, I'm just one person listening to this podcast. What can I do?
You actually have more power than you might think. Yeah. You can demand more transparency from your bank. You can support policies that promote ethical and responsible use of technology in finance. Your voice matters.
So we're not just passive bystanders in this whole tech revolution. We can actually help shape how it unfolds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can choose to do business with companies that align with your values, ones that prioritize transparency, security, ethical practices. Your consumer choices make a difference.
So this Citigroup story, as crazy as it sounds, has actually sparked a really important conversation.
It has. It's a reminder that we can't just take this technology for granted. We need to be informed, engaged, and hold these institutions accountable.
Well said. I think that's a great takeaway from this deep dive. It's been eye-opening for sure.
I agree. It's always great to discuss these issues with such an engaged audience.
And to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe double-check your bank balance every now and then. You never know. Until next time, keep exploring with the